Welcome to On Defense and Security, a podcast that examines domestic and international defense and military affairs. Through conversations, we will bridge the gap between academic research and policy and provide a platform for informed discussions, enabling our listeners to better understand critical issues.
On today's episode of On Defense and Security, we are delighted to welcome Jyoti Hirani-Driver, Acting Managing Director and Chief Operating Officer of NATO's Defense Innovation Accelerator for the North Atlantic. Jyoti has been the Chief Operating Officer of NATO Diana since January 2024 and is responsible for overseeing the Accelerator program, establishing business performance and risk management, and identifying and implementing improvements across the organization. She is also responsible for the HR function and establishing the Diana Regional Hub in Estonia and the Diana Regional Office in Canada. Thank you again so much for joining us today. Perhaps to begin, for a bit of perspective for folks who have not heard about the Diana initiative at NATO, would you be able to share a little bit about how Diana was established, what the mission is, and how it fits within the broader alliance?
Yeah, of course, really happy to explain. So Diana is the Defense Innovation Accelerator for the North Atlantic. So it was created because we need to keep at pace or outdo our adversaries when it comes to deterrence, when it comes to fighting and winning wars. And therefore, it was decided in NATO that we needed an innovation body to do that. We know there's great ideas, there's great technologies that exist outside of government, and they exist in sectors like the civilian space, and those technologies could have application to defense. So in reality, we were created as the innovation engine for NATO, charged with finding and accelerating game-changing technologies to provide our warfighters with the best capabilities. And, that includes how they make decisions, but that also includes, the weapons they hold, etc. So right across the spectrum of what warfighters need.
You had mentioned the key connection between civilian technologies and military applications. This leads us to the increasingly common term dual use. I was wondering if you could expand a bit on how you see dual use and how dual use fits into the Diana mandate.
Yeah, so I think dual use, a highly contested term, right? So some people think it's helpful and some don't. In our context, it's absolutely helpful. We can't keep relying on the same suppliers of defense technology. We can't keep relying on the same players in defense. And we have to diversify our industrial base, right? So we need new ideas. We need that fresh talent in so that governments have more choice, right? And that's exactly what we're trying to do with dual use. So we know there are great technologies in the civilian space. And if you look at it, the time for procurement in the civilian space is so much shorter than in the defense space. So we're almost looking at those technologies which are proven, and albeit in the civilian world, but then looking at how do we pivot those in to defense. And that's where Diana really comes in, right? So we are running an accelerator program, giving the innovators, the networks, the know-how, the knowledge to navigate what is a very complicated defense market. And it's actually understanding how could their tech, which could be dual use, proven in the civilian space, how could that be used in the defense space? So we are building use cases, defense use cases with the innovators. We are offering opportunities for testing and operational experimentation as well, which is so critical. It's actually testing the technology in a real world scenario. So I think dual use is really important. But what's also important to note is dual use is a business strategy for innovators. I think it's helpful for them too. As I said, defense procurement cycles are longer, and there's much the alliance is doing to sort of rectify that and help with that. But in that case, we need to offer an alternative path for those innovators, because the worst thing is those innovators die and defense never gets that technology or that capability. So for us, it's really important to ensure innovators have a civilian use case, but also a defense use case. And at some point in the company's journey, they're going to have to make that business decision. They're going to have to decide, hey, do I keep pursuing the civilian space or both? Or do I now fully pivot into defense? But what's really good about Diana is we are showing them both. And we are diversifying the industrial base by introducing new partners and, non-traditional partners.
I just want to follow up on that idea of bringing in non-traditional partners, because I understand that sometimes this can be a challenge for folks who maybe did not develop the business or the innovation within a defense context to really build up that defense literacy to have a meaningful impact and engage with defense partners. Would you be able to expand a bit on that?
Yeah, sure. So I think through our program offering, I think there are a couple of things we do to help innovators understand defense. So I think the first is through our accelerator programming. So we have modules on how to navigate the defense and security market. What does spiral innovation in defense mean? What are the markets available for that particular product or technology? What is the use case as well for that particular technology? And what we do throughout our program is not just module-based learning, it's also giving innovators a defense mentor alongside a technical and a business, but the defense mentor is really important here. But we also have an in-house team here, right? And we call them the adoption team. We have serving military personnel who are there to also hold the hand of innovators. So we do it through learning and also helping those innovators build use cases. The other thing we do really well is operational experimentation. So it's very good that we have over 200 test centers in Diana's network. But those are, most of them are labs where innovators can go to break and test and validate their technology. And I think that is super important to provide validation for the technology. But what's equally really important is giving them a scenario to test in, which is real world, and it's real world defense. So this is what we call operational experimentation, and it's actually our Deputy Director North America who leads this work. So Major General Paul Payton, based in our Halifax office in Canada, and he and his team really work with the innovators to make them understand what they should expect in experimentation, how their solution will deal with the real world challenges of interoperability, etc. So these are really good, learnings for the innovator and really good opportunities to validate their tech. I think also what we do really well when it comes to growing an innovator's application to defense is we have a mechanism or a framework called the Rapid Adoption Service regulation. And essentially this allows NATO Diana help facilitate contracts beyond the initial accelerator period. So those innovators don't need to recompete. And we do this through finding the right end users for that technology, and also, talking to them to say, hey, there are some great innovations. You told us these were the challenges you faced. as a nation, as NATO, here are the solutions. So how do we ensure we don't waste taxpayer money, but we also don't waste innovator time and money? And how do we ensure we can, have a follow-up contract off the back of a NATO Diana accelerator contract? So those are some of the things we do to help businesses pivot into defense.
It's a lot. It's an ambitious program, and also particularly impressive how it makes use of existing resources, at other facilities rather than building, test centers from scratch. It's quite impressive how all of the different parts have been assembled, including, as a Canadian podcast, seeing those assets in Canada develop. So we've already had a mention of the Halifax office. Would you be able to share a bit more on how Halifax fits into the broader Diana picture?
So Halifax and Canada, really important partner for NATO Diana. Year on year, we see great applications from Canadian innovators. And I think it's last year received 570 proposals from Canadian innovators, which is, I think, fantastic. So really important in terms of the innovations we're seeing from Canada as well. So you're right to say we have a regional office in Halifax. We've got a sizable footprint at the minute, hoping to expand that footprint too. And I think that regional office is really important to us for a variety of reasons, right? So the test center network I mentioned, over 200 in our network, running the processes to decide which innovators can test where, but also keeping that large community engaged and understanding what are the unique capabilities they offer. That is the role or a functional role of the regional director North America at the minute. So that is being run out of the Halifax office. Also having Major General Paul Payton there as the deputy director North America, also really critical. He is charged with building the relationships in the region, but also running our operational experimentation. And that's just not in Halifax, it's across the alliance, right? So the regional office expands right across, all 32 nations and not just for Canada. I think the other thing to mention is, yes, that regional office is, fairly new, a couple of years old, but we really do see that as as an important part of our footprint, right? It's the only base over the ocean, and we see it as a really important one.
We've heard a bit about the Canadian innovators and the regional office, but are there other ways that Canadian institutions are engaging with Diana? I believe a couple of the test centers, for example.
Yes, absolutely. I think what I should mention is we've got a great accelerator site, Cove, which is, is one of our 16 accelerator sites currently delivering for our innovators, mentoring a very capable cohort of innovators through the program. We've also got test centers within Canada, and hopefully we're looking at an expansion again of those networks. And you're absolutely right. We rely on great partners on the ground, and in particular in Halifax, to help us deliver. I think the other thing Halifax really offers is the ability, proximity to the Arctic to offer opportunities when it comes to, protecting the North End Arctic security. That is really important as well. Obviously, where Halifax is based, there's great opportunities for ocean, maritime testing as well. These are things, the alliance. So we need this across NATO. And it's not just innovations or capabilities needed for Canada. So really how I view the regional office is almost a beacon, a leader for the alliance when it comes to maritime, ocean, and Arctic security.
So as we're moving into the summer now, what are the trends, technologies, and other issues that you're tracking in defense innovation over the short term?
If we look at today's warfighter, he or she is a data-driven warfighter. So data still as important as it was, last year. So ensuring the warfighter gets, it's all about speed of relevance. It's getting accurate information quickly to the warfighter so they can make their intervention. So I still think that's a really important trend or area or capability need. Air defense, of course, really important. We're seeing that in Ukraine, but we're also seeing that from Russian incursions in NATO airspace, to mention Estonia and Finland. So that will continue to be a priority. I think the other thing we are really realizing is that, traditionally we have focused on 100% solutions and then fielding them in the battlefield and getting that feedback then. I think what we're seeing from Ukraine is that actually 60% solutions, we should go out and test them, bring that feedback, and then iterate and improve the technology, right? So this is really going to be, it's going to continue to be the name of the game. It's how quick we can innovate. And for that, we need to accept that, iteration doesn't take months, and we will not spend months on it. We will spend weeks on it. And this is why our operational experimentation, again, is really important to provide that constant feedback loop to our innovators. The other thing is, at the NATO summit last year, the SecGen and all 32 nations agreed to the Rapid Adoption Action Plan. And this is really about how do we field great tech within 24 months into the hands of the warfighter. So we can really see the doubling down of that. And that will mean a pivot in how Diana does its challenges as well. So we are looking at ways of how can we double down on our rapid adoption service activities? How can we get more contracts for our innovators and get them truly accelerated to who needs them? And the who here is our armed forces. So I think those are some of the tech trends I see, but also some of the NATO-wide trends I see as well.
And both requiring increased capacity to help accelerate.
And the name of the game here really is relying on those trusted networks we already have. And that's what I think we do best. We build the partnerships with the right people, like-minded people to deliver for our innovators. A good example is obviously our accelerator network and our test center network. But most recently, we launched the NATO Diana Capital Network. And this is bringing together across the alliance again, like-minded investors to help grow and scale our innovators. So the work we're doing in, where Diana is really adding value is leveraging existing networks. We don't try to do everything ourselves. We are not the experts in absolutely everything. But what we are really good at is building relationships and building a cohesive program for our innovators.
So from the listener side, for folks who may be interested in defense and tech, what should they be watching as far as either the Diana program in particular or the operationalization of these technologies?
So I would shamelessly plug our NATO Diana challenges, which will be launched on the 1st of June. They will be all over our website. They will be on LinkedIn. We will be promoting. We will also work with Government of Canada to promote our calls. Our calls are based on warfighter requirements. These are warfighters telling us what are the problems they're facing on the battlefield. So these are our demand signals. We are telling innovators what we're looking for, and therefore it is validated, right? So there really is an incentive for innovators to apply. Our processes are not cumbersome. We're not asking you for 50-page proposals. We think that's very outdated. We think that's a waste of, precious time for small companies. What we do ask, we have very lean paperwork. So we do ask all innovators, if you think your technology can solve one of our challenge areas or there is great application, please take the time and apply. So really do watch out for that. With Diana, some exciting stuff coming up. So we are also looking at a more dynamic way of running our challenges, and these will be much shorter in nature. We usually operate, a 6-month accelerator program, and then a further 6 months for innovators that make it through past the 6 months. But we want to be more agile, right? Innovation wars today are, quick, fast-paced, and we, as NATO Diana, need to respond quickly too. So we are going to look at a more dynamic way of doing challenges and launching these throughout the year rather than just the summer period. So innovators and great technologists, great businesses out there, please do look at our website and please do apply.
Thank you. That's a very exciting change, but I would imagine also taking a lot of work behind the scenes to make sure that all of the supports are still in place. That brings us to the end of the questions that I had for you. But if there are any parting thoughts that you'd like to share with our audience, I know that this is a highly interesting and engaging topic and an important part of NATO.
Yeah, I think the thing I would say to the listeners out there, and this is particularly the community that has never engaged with defense, right? We are a premium accelerator in the alliance. We are the ones doing defense innovation really well. And the proof is in the contracts we have placed. We've got 4 rapid adoption contracts, follow-on contracts placed. So this is really a chance to enter into defense. And it's not just a 100,000 euro, funding we do here. We really do open up networks and really help you get that long-term business through our program. And the other thing I would, say to listeners is, if you're nervous about working with defense, it is not all bullets and bombs. It's not all offensive weaponry, etc. It is about the simple things like protecting our infrastructure. It is about, how you do secure communications in a contested environment. It's not all about lethality here, and there is opportunity here. And I think, to your listeners, national security is everyone's role and responsibility here. We're all part of a community. We all contribute. And that's what I would leave with your listeners.
Thank you very much. This has been a fascinating discussion on an area of great interest to me, but I also know something that will resonate with our listeners. So thank you very much for sharing a bit of your day with us.
Yeah, thank you so much.